In a city that had forgotten how to slow down, there was a small watchmaker's shop that seemed to exist outside of time itself. The story begins not with people, but with clocks, hundreds of them, each ticking at its own rhythm, creating a symphony of passing moments. He was the clockmaker, a man in his late 50s whose life had been measured in ticks and tocks. His wife, the love of his life, had passed away exactly 365 days ago, and since then, he had been winding every clock in his shop but letting his own heart run down. He spoke only to his clocks, each one representing a memory of their life together. The anniversary clock she loved, the travel alarm from their Paris honeymoon, the grandfather clock that stood in their first home. She was a young cellist whose career had been ascending like a crescendo until a nerve condition in her hand made holding the bow agony. The doctors said it might be permanent. She wandered into the watchmaker's shop by accident, drawn by the strange music of hundreds of ticking clocks, seeking solace from the silence that had fallen over her own life. Their first interaction was through glass. He was repairing an antique music box. She was watching from the other side of the display window, tears streaming down her face at the familiar melody it played, the same piece that had been playing during her final, disastrous performance. He invited her in without words, simply opening the door. The shop felt like stepping into a different century. The air smelled of oil and old wood, and time seemed to move slower here. "I can fix anything that ticks," he said, his voice rough from lack of use. "But I can't fix silence." "I can't make music anymore," she confessed, holding up her trembling hand. He showed her his world, how each clock had its own personality, its own rhythm. The impatient alarm clock that rushed ahead, the melancholy cuckoo clock that was always 5 minutes late, the steady metronome that kept perfect time like a faithful heart. She started visiting daily, sitting among the clocks, listening to their symphony. He noticed that when certain clocks chimed together, her hand would stop trembling. When the anniversary clock played its melody at 4 p.m., she could almost hold a pencil without pain. One rainy afternoon, he made a discovery. He was repairing an antique grandfather clock when she entered, and her face lit up at its deep, resonant chime. Her hand, which had been shaking violently all morning, suddenly stilled. "It's the vibrations," he realized. "Different frequencies affect your nerve condition differently." He became a conductor of time. He would adjust the clocks so specific chimes would align, creating harmonic vibrations that danced through the shop. The Vienna regulator's high chime with the long case clock's deep gong, the carriage clock's silver bell with the wall clock's soft tone. He was composing with time itself, and her hand was healing to its rhythm. She started bringing her cello. At first, she could only play for minutes at a time, but as he fine-tuned his symphony of clocks, she could play for longer periods. The clocks would chime, and she would play along, her cello's vibrations joining the harmonic tapestry he had created. The crisis came when developers bought the building. The watchmaker's shop, with its 5 generations of history, was to be replaced by a modern high-rise. The clocks would be silenced forever. But she had a plan. On the shop's final Saturday, they organized the last symphony of time. They moved every clock to the front of the shop, facing the street. At precisely 3 p.m., as crowds passed by, he started the sequence. First one clock chimed, then another, then dozens, until the entire street was filled with the most beautiful, chaotic symphony of time. Bells rang, cuckoos called, melodies played from music boxes, and through it all, she played her cello. The first full piece she'd managed since her injury, her hands steady and sure, her music weaving through the chiming clocks. People stopped. They listened. They cried. Someone started filming. The video went viral, the clockmaker and the cellist's last performance. The public outcry was immediate. The city declared the shop a historical landmark, and watch enthusiasts from around the world donated to create a trust for its preservation. That evening, after the crowds had left and only the familiar ticking remained, he took her now steady hand. "You fixed me," she whispered. "No," he said, looking at the clocks around them. "We simply found the right rhythm for your heart to beat again." He had spent his life measuring time, but she had taught him that some moments, the space between heartbeats, the silence between notes, the look between two people understanding each other, are beyond measurement. And that sometimes, when everything seems broken, you just need to find the right combination of ticks and talks to make the music play again. In the end, they discovered that while clocks measure time, only love can truly make it stand still. A year after their famous Last Symphony of Time, the Watchmaker's shop had transformed into something greater. Donations from around the world allowed them to create the Chrono Center, a place where music therapy was combined with the healing vibrations of mechanical clocks. She now directed a small orchestra of musicians who, like her, faced physical challenges and were searching for a path back to music through vibration. Her own hands had fully recovered, and she was performing on grand stages again, but she always carried with her a small, beautifully crafted pocket watch he had made for her. He, in turn, had found a new purpose. He no longer saw himself merely as a repairer of broken timepieces, but as a keeper of stories and a creator of healing soundscapes. His workshop within the Chrono Center was always filled with the gentle, synchronized ticking of dozens of clocks, each carefully calibrated to create a specific harmonic environment. People would come to sit in the ticking room to find peace, to ease their anxiety, or, like the cellist once had, to seek physical healing. One evening, on the anniversary of the day she had first wandered into a shop, he led her to the center of the main room. All the clocks were silent. "I've spent my life measuring seconds, minutes, and hours," he began, his voice soft but clear in the expectant quiet. "I believed time was a linear thing, moving only forward, taking things away from us." He looked at her, his eyes full of a quiet, profound love. "But you taught me that time can also be a circle, that it can bring back what was lost, not as it was, but as something new and even more beautiful." With a gentle gesture, he started the master pendulum. A single, deep chime resonated through the room. Then another clock joined in, then another, until the space was filled with a familiar, glorious symphony. But this time it was different. The melody was richer, more complex, and woven through it was the clear, soulful voice of her cello, a recording she had made for this purpose, forever integrated into the rhythm of his clocks. "It's our duet," she whispered, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "You've made our moment eternal." "No," he corrected softly, taking her hands. "We have created a new time together, a time that is ours." He led her to his workbench, where a beautiful new clock stood under a glass dome. Instead of numbers, its face was inlaid with mother-of-pearl notes from her favorite cello piece. The pendulum was her bow, and it swung back and forth, keeping perfect time. "It doesn't just tell the hour," he explained. "It tells our story. Every chime is a note from your music. Every tick is a beat of my heart, finally in sync with the world again." They stood together, listening as the clocks played the story of their second chances, a story no longer about final seasons, but about endless new beginnings. He had given her back her music, and she had given him back his time. And in the space where their two arts met, they had built a forever that ticked, talked, and sang.